the colony never truly slept. It only dimmed itself into a softer version of consciousness, like a machine pretending to dream. He stood by the curved glass of the observation ring, watching the distant star flicker with unstable light, as if even it couldn't decide whether to keep going or give up entirely. Behind him, the soft hum of life support systems filled the air, steady and reliable, unlike people. She was sitting on the edge of the levitating couch, swinging her legs slightly, her long ears angled toward the faintest frequencies leaking through the station's shielding. "That star is arguing with itself again," she said, tilting her head. "It's very dramatic. I think it enjoys the attention." He glanced back at her, allowing a small smile. "You're the only one who can hear a star having a personality crisis." "It's a gift," she replied, then paused. "Or a curse, depends on the day." Their child was asleep in the adjacent chamber, surrounded by softly glowing monitors that tracked every heartbeat, every breath, every tiny dream. The colony raised children with precision, nothing left to chance, nothing left to chaos. He liked it that way. Predictable. Safe. She didn't. "I saw a traveler today," she said suddenly, her tone shifting, becoming lighter in a way that felt unfamiliar. "From the outer systems. He says there are places where gravity isn't regulated. You can actually fall." He raised an eyebrow. "That sounds inconvenient." "No, it sounds alive," she said, standing now, her movements restless. "He's been to planets where the sky changes color every hour, where cities float without anchors, where people don't schedule their emotions 3 days in advance." He turned fully toward her, studying her expression, the way her eyes carried something distant, something already leaving. "And what did you tell him?" She smiled a little too quickly. "That we have excellent oxygen filtration." He almost laughed, but something in his chest tightened instead. "You always joke when you're serious." "And you always get serious when I joke," she shot back gently, stepping closer. For a moment, it felt like before, like the countless quiet nights they had shared, building a life out of small, steady pieces. But the moment didn't hold. "I can hear things, you know," she said more softly, her long ears twitching slightly. "Not just stars, signals, patterns, there's more out there than this." She gestured vaguely around them, at the controlled perfection of their world. "This place is safe, but it's also small." "It's not small," he replied. "It's enough." "For you," she said. The words lingered between them, heavier than the artificial gravity holding them in place. He took a slow breath, trying to keep his voice steady. "We built this together, a life, a family. And I'm suffocating in it," she interrupted, not harshly, but with a quiet honesty that felt worse. "Not because of you, never because of you." He let out a short, humorless chuckle. "That's comforting. I'll make sure to remember that part." She winced slightly, then forced a small smile. "You're going to turn this into one of your tragic monologues, aren't you?" "I wasn't planning to," he said, "but you're giving me excellent material." For a brief second, they both laughed, and it almost felt normal again. Then she stepped back. "I'm going to leave," she said. The words didn't echo, didn't shatter anything outwardly. The systems kept humming, the star kept flickering, their child kept sleeping peacefully in the next room. The universe, it seemed, had terrible timing for emotional devastation. He blinked once, as if recalibrating. "Leave, as in a trip." She shook her head, her expression steady now, resolved in a way that made it clear this decision had been growing long before this moment. "As in, I don't know when I'll come back." He stared at her, searching for hesitation, for doubt, for anything he could hold on to. "We have a child." "I know. That's not a small detail," he added dryly. "I'm aware," she said, a faint, sad smile crossing her face. "I gave birth, remember." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "So what, you just follow some stranger because he told you gravity is optional?" "It's not about him," she said. "It's about me." "That's usually how these stories go," he muttered. She stepped closer one last time, reaching out, her fingers brushing his arm. "You'll be okay, you always are." He looked at her hand, then back at her face. "That's not the point." "I know," she whispered. And then, before he could say anything else, before the moment could stretch into something irreversible, she turned and walked toward the exit corridor, her steps light, almost weightless, as if she had already left long before her body followed. The first thing he noticed after she left was how loud everything became. Not actual noise, the systems still hummed at their usual polite volume, but the absence of her turned silence into something with weight. Even the walls seemed to be waiting for a voice that wasn't coming back. Their child woke up earlier than usual the next cycle, small fingers pressing against the transparent divider. "Where is she?" the boy asked, his voice still thick with sleep. He hesitated for half a second too long. "She went on a trip." The boy blinked. "Without snacks?" He almost smiled. "Apparently yes, very unprepared." "That's dangerous," the boy concluded seriously. "She'll come back when she gets hungry." He nodded, because it was easier than explaining gravity, distance, and the kind of leaving that didn't have a return schedule. Days rearranged themselves into routines. He learned how to manage everything alone: work shifts, meals, the endless questions that came with a child who noticed more than he said. At night, when the colony dimmed again, he would sit by the observation glass, staring at the unstable star, half expecting it to argue back with him. It didn't. Instead, something else answered: work. At first, it was just a distraction. He volunteered for additional maintenance cycles, recalibrating energy grids that no one else wanted to touch. The systems were old, inefficient, designed for stability rather than growth. He began to see patterns, inefficiencies that others had accepted as good enough. "Good enough is just lazy wearing a uniform," he muttered one night, wrist deep in a panel that sparked in protest. A nearby drone beeped disapprovingly. "Don't judge me," he added. "You literally float for a living." He started redesigning small things, energy flow adjustments, micro-optimizations, then bigger things, entire subsystems. The colony administrators noticed, first with mild curiosity, then with interest that bordered on suspicion. "You're exceeding your assigned parameters," one of them said during a formal review. He shrugged. "Your parameters are outdated." "That's not how protocol works. That's why protocol is slow," he replied calmly. The upgrades worked. Energy output increased, system strain decreased, and suddenly the colony wasn't just surviving, it was improving. His name began to circulate through internal networks, attached to reports filled with numbers that were hard to ignore. At home, the boy watched him work, eyes wide. "Are you fixing the whole station?" "Trying to," he said. "Can you fix people too?" He paused, then let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "If I figure that out, I'll be very rich." "You're already rich," the boy said confidently. He raised an eyebrow. "We are. We have extra dessert sometimes," the boy explained. He smiled faintly. "Fair point, peak success." Time moved differently after that. Faster in some ways, slower in others. Offers came from outside the colony, research groups, interstellar corporations, places that spoke of expansion instead of maintenance. At first, he ignored them. Then he started reading, then replying. One evening, as he reviewed a proposal involving energy transfer across unstable spatial fields, the boy leaned against his arm. "Is she coming back today?" He didn't look up immediately. "No." "Tomorrow?" "No." The boy was quiet for a moment. "Okay." That was the moment something shifted, not breaking, not collapsing, just settling into a new shape. Hope, the kind that waited at the door, slowly packed its things and left. He accepted the offer the next cycle. Leaving the colony felt different for him than it had for her. There was no rush, no thrill of escape, just a quiet decision, executed with precision. He secured everything for the boy, ensured stability, planned every step. As the transport vessel detached, the colony shrinking behind them, the boy pressed his face to the viewport. "Are we going somewhere with falling gravity?" He smirked slightly. "Maybe, but we'll bring snacks." "Good," the boy said. "I don't trust trips without snacks." For the first time in a long while, he let himself laugh, softly but genuinely. And as the ship entered the vast stretch between systems, he didn't look back. By the time she found him again, his name had already reached places she couldn't even pronounce without a translation implant correcting her mid-sentence. It wasn't just reputation, it was presence. Systems ran differently because of him. Entire networks depended on structures he had designed, balanced so precisely that even chaotic stars behaved like disciplined performers. She stood at the edge of one of those systems now, her long ears catching the layered hum of controlled energy fields. "You've changed the sound of space," she murmured to herself. "That's annoyingly impressive." Finding him wasn't difficult. Reaching him was. Security drones scanned her twice, then a third time as if personally offended by her persistence. One of them emitted a flat tone. "State your purpose." "I'm here to see him," she said. "Clarify. Him is statistically unhelpful." She exhaled. "The one who fixed your entire existence." There was a pause, then, surprisingly, clarification accepted. She almost smiled. Good, you're smarter than you look. I do not have a look, the drone replied. Exactly, she said. When she finally stepped into his space, it didn't feel like stepping into the past. It felt like entering something she had never been part of. He stood by a transparent interface, lines of shifting data reflecting across his face. For a moment, she simply watched him, as if confirming he was real. You upgraded, she said lightly. He turned, and there it was, that calm, steady expression, familiar yet distant. So did you, he replied, his gaze briefly noting her, then settling somewhere neutral. You look well-traveled. That's a polite way of saying slightly broken, she said with a small grin. I was going to say experienced, he answered. Even worse. There was a pause, not awkward, just measured. I heard about you, she continued. Energy systems, interstellar networks, the whole man who refuses to fail reputation. Very dramatic. He shrugged slightly. It pays well. She laughed softly, then glanced around. You really built all this. Not alone, he said. But I made sure it works. She nodded, her ears twitching faintly as if searching for something beneath the surface. It does. It's stable. You always liked stable. I like reliable, he corrected. She hesitated, then took a small step closer. I came back. I noticed, he said. I thought maybe. She stopped, then tried again with a faint smile. Okay, I didn't think. That's kind of my brand. That hasn't changed, he said, and for a brief second there was something almost like humor in his voice. She seized it. See, we still have something. He looked at her then, fully, and whatever softness had flickered settled back into calm clarity. We have a past. That's a very technical way to say it, she replied quietly. It's accurate. She swallowed, then nodded slowly. I made a mistake. Yes, he said, not unkindly. I thought I was chasing something bigger, she continued. But it turns out bigger isn't the same as better. Who knew? He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gestured lightly, and a small door opened behind him. The boy, no, not a boy anymore, stepped in. Taller now, composed, his expression thoughtful. He looked at her, recognition flickering into something more complex. You forgot snacks, he said. She blinked, then let out a short, surprised laugh that cracked slightly at the edges. I did. That was risky, he added. I realize that now. He studied her for a moment longer, then gave a small nod, as if closing a file in his mind. Good to see you. And you, she whispered. He stepped back, moving to stand beside his father, not behind him, not uncertain, just there. She looked between them, something in her chest tightening and softening at the same time. You did okay, she said to him. I did more than okay, he replied, not with pride but with quiet certainty. She smiled faintly. Yeah, you did. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was clear. I don't belong here, do I? She asked finally. He shook his head gently. No. She let out a slow breath, her long ears lowering slightly, catching nothing now but the steady rhythm of a world that had moved on without her. That's fair. She stepped back, offering one last small smile. For what it's worth, I'm glad you became someone I can't reach. He inclined his head. So am I. She turned then, walking away, not weightless this time, but grounded, each step deliberate. No rushing, no chasing, just moving forward. Behind her, the systems continued to hum, stable and certain, shaped by someone who had once been broken and chose, piece by piece, to rebuild into something stronger. And this time, no one was waiting by the door. He didn't expect to think about her again, but the universe had a habit of revisiting old data at inconvenient times, like a system that refused to delete corrupted files. Still, it wasn't regret that surfaced, it was clarity. The kind that didn't hurt anymore. Life moved, as it always did. Projects expanded, systems evolved, and his work began stretching into something even larger, stabilizing stars that were once considered impossible to manage. One of them pulsed on the edge of collapse, its fluctuations wild, unpredictable. Reminds me of people, he muttered, adjusting the control interface. A nearby drone responded instantly. Clarification. People are significantly less stable. Exactly my point, he said. The older version of him might have hesitated, might have doubted whether he could control something so volatile. But that version no longer existed. He had learned something far more valuable than technical mastery. He had learned where to stand, what to hold on to, and what to let go. Behind him, his son leaned casually against the console, watching the star stabilize in real time. So if this explodes, do we run or just pretend it's part of the plan? We confidently pretend, he replied. Running is bad for reputation. Good to know, the young man said. I'll practice my this is fine face. He smirked slightly. You're already good at that. The system locked into place, energy streams aligning, chaos bending into order. Another impossible thing made possible. Another version of himself, years ago, would have looked at this moment and thought success meant proving something to someone else. Now he knew better. Later, as the cycle dimmed and the systems shifted into their quieter state, he stood once more by a viewport, not out of habit, not out of longing, but because he chose to. The stars no longer felt like unanswered questions. They felt like open paths. You're thinking again, his son said, stepping beside him. I do that occasionally, he replied. Dangerous habit. Very. There was a pause, comfortable, unforced. Do you ever wonder about her? The young man asked. He considered it, not avoiding the question, not rushing the answer. No, he said finally, not in the way I used to. That sounds like progress. It is. His son nodded, then grinned slightly. Also, for the record, if she ever comes back again, I'm still bringing up the snack thing. He let out a quiet laugh. You should. Some mistakes deserve to be remembered. Good, the young man said. I like traditions. They stood there a while longer, watching the distant systems move in quiet harmony. No urgency, no unfinished business, no questions left hanging between them. He had built something more than structures, more than systems. A life that didn't depend on what had been lost, but on what had been created after. And somewhere out there, she was living her own path, no longer a missing piece, no longer a question that needed answering. Just a part of a story that had already done its work. He turned away from the stars first this time. Come on, he said. Let's get something to eat. Actual food, his son asked. Yes, not just nutrient paste, pretending to have personality. I said food, not disappointment. Best day ever, the young man replied. As they walked off together, the systems continued to hum, steady, reliable, alive in a way that no longer needed fixing. And for the first time, nothing felt unfinished.